I remember me and my teacher, we end up going inside the closet. And the first thing she says to me was, oh, so like, did you do the homework yet, Bubba? And I remember just looking at her thinking, what in the world am I doing in the closet playing 7 Minutes in Heaven with my teacher? Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another crazy but embarrassing story. So this story all starts off in the year of grade 8. Now, grade 8's the final year of middle school for me. And let's just say middle school is a whole freak show. Literally, it's the years where basically everyone's hitting puberty and things start to make more sense between your legs. I know that sounds really too much to say, but YouTube, please understand this is for educational purposes. Now, going on, I remember my grade 8 year, there was a girl in my class that not a lot of people liked for some reason. And by people, I mostly mean the guys. I really have no idea why a lot of guys in my school did not like this girl specifically, but she was not really well known or liked between all the dudes in my school. But as for the girls, well, almost every girl in my school absolutely loved her. I have no idea how this even worked. I didn't know if she was, lesbian or something. But at the same time, we were in grade 8 and we didn't know any better. So honestly, I had really no idea why. Until one day I remember I was in my middle school walking down the hallway to my next class. And this girl that a lot of girls liked, but not a lot of guys liked, ended up walking up to me. She walks up to me and says, hey, Bubba, I don't know if you knew, but like, I'm having like a birthday party. And like, I was thinking, do you want to like maybe go? And as I was deciding in my head, I remember seeing a bunch of guys just staring at me thinking, yo, why is that girl talking to Bubba, bro? Is he snitching? And in my mind, as I knew they were just saying that, I was like literally trying to focus on the conversation at hand. And I said to her, yeah, I mean, I'm down. Where's the birthday party? Oh, it's totally at my place. A lot of girls said that like they thought you were like cool to go and like, you didn't hate me or anything. So, I'm trying to make it like more boy girl party. And like my parents are totally cool with it. So do you want to like go? Yeah, sure. Just send me the invite. I remember she ends up texting me the address and I start walking away from her. And as I was walking away, I remember two of my friends ended up walking up to me saying, yo, Bubba, why'd you talk to that girl, bro? Everyone's questioning it. All the guys are concerned. Oh, she just invited me to her birthday. Are you going? Well, I mean, yeah, why wouldn't I? Bubba, bro, as a homie, me and him are gonna show up with you, all right? You guys are gonna show up to the birthday party with me? Yeah, and don't worry, she can't say no because we're the cool kids. Sure. Okay, if that's how it works. Yeah, sure, you guys can go. I really had no idea why, but to be fair, in my friend group back when I was in grade 8, we had the really confident dude and we had the really annoying dude, and then there was just me, the quiet one. And knowing this group dynamic, we always got into crazy shenanigans. But let's just say this girl's birthday was one of the most insane things ever, because I remember the day of the party ended up happening. And I remember after school, everyone started talking about this party, and a lot of girls were coming up to me, actually, funny enough, and saying, hey, Bubba, are you going to like that girl's party? Yeah, I got invited. I'm bringing two of my friends. Okay, well, we'll see you there. Oh my goodness. And they all got excited. A lot of girls were excited for this party, and I had really no idea why. But then finally, when I ended up basically going to my final class to end off the day, I remember my teacher ends up saying, okay, class, so this weekend, do not email me. I'm celebrating my daughter's birthday, but have the homework done by Monday. All right, have a good weekend. And I remember thinking, crazy how she has a daughter that's birthday is the same day as the birthday party I'm going to. But right as I walk out of the classroom, I remember I go home, I get dressed, I tell my mom I'm going to a birthday party. She was totally surprised because usually in grade 8, I was a loner and a really boring kid. Wow, my mom really thought less of me that time. But you know what? That's not the point. After I got ready and everything, I ended up basically begging my dad for a ride, and he ended up driving me to the birthday. And my dad ended up telling me right before leaving, he said, Bubba, if you need me to come pick you up and anything weird happens, you tell me and I'll get you, okay? Yeah, no problem, Dad, is what I told him. And then I ended up heading inside the party. When I went into this grade 8 middle school party, I remember I ended up seeing a lot of girls there, and I was like, okay, I see a lot of girls there from my school. But then out of nowhere, I see my two friends running up to me saying, Bubba, do you know whose house this is? No, why? And that's when I realized whose house it was. It was my teacher's house, because it was her daughter that invited me to her daughter's birthday. Does that make sense? I don't know if that made sense, but if it did, you guys know what I'm talking about. Basically, I was in my teacher's house, and I was like, yo, this is really weird. And as I see my teacher looking at me, and I'm staring at her, and she walks up to me and my friend saying, oh, hey, Bubba, I didn't expect my daughter to invite you guys. Yeah, no, we didn't know you lived here. Well, I did say my daughter was having a party, didn't I? Yeah, no, you did in class. We just didn't know, it was your daughter. What do you mean? Do you guys not know my daughter's last name? It's the same as mine. No, we don't really know each other's last names, which to be fair, in my grade 8 year, I didn't know anyone's last name. Okay, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you. But I remember, as awkward as that conversation was, the girl that ended up inviting me, the teacher's daughter, ends up seeing me and runs up to me and gives me a hug. I end up giving her a birthday present, and then that's where everything just starts going really bad, because this girl really wanted to have like a proper girl and boy party, but there was only 3 dudes, which is the 2 friends I had and me. And as for the girl side of things, well, there was literally like a bunch of girls, so the ratio was like 3 to like 15, which is super weird in my opinion. It's super awkward. But I remember it got to the point where as we were all hanging out in the living room, just talking and mingling, and I guess really just hanging out with each other like grade 8s do, I remember this girl that was her birthday ended up standing up on the coffee table saying, okay guys, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna play 7 minutes in heaven. Everyone get in the circle. And at that moment, I was just thinking in my mind, how in the world are we gonna play 7 minutes in heaven with only 3 dudes and 15 girls? Like, this is making no sense whatsoever. But I remember we all ended up hopping into a circle, and this is where things get awkward, because I remember my teacher walks in saying, oh my goodness, are you guys playing 7 minutes in heaven? I used to play this all the time. Let me join in. And that's when I looked at my teacher and looked at my friends, and my friends were totally confused on what in the world this teacher was doing. Like, we thought she was trying to make, like, 7 minutes in heaven more PG, I guess. But honestly, this teacher full on just started to play. And as we started going through a few rounds of 7 minutes in heaven, automatically it was my turn to spin the bottle. And I remember as I was spinning the bottle, I was praying that it would land on anyone but my teacher or her daughter. And guess who it lands on? It landed on my teacher. At that moment, I started to panic inside, and I'm like, bro, like, do I have to? Is there like any way I can not do it? But then this teacher ends up standing up first and saying, okay, Baba, let's go inside the closet. And me, I felt terrified, and I really did not want to stand up. But then she ended up grabbing me by my shoulder, and she ends up basically standing me up, and we go inside the closet. As we're in the closet, I remember she ends up closing the door, and the closet was like super dark. Like, I could not see anything. But as I'm in there with my teacher looks at me and says, oh, so Baba, I'm just curious, did you end up finishing the homework? You're asking me about homework when we're in the closet, is what I told her. And that's when the teacher ended up saying something more crazy, which was, oh, I mean, if you want to do something else, just say so. And that's when she ended up basically pushing herself towards me, and we ended up doing the devil's tango in the closet. Yeah, I know, really crazy, but at the same time, super, super weird. And I remember we ended up being there for more than 8 minutes. Like, no joke, as the kids were literally yelling, okay, time's up, guys. Me and this teacher did not come out because we were trying to put on our clothes as fast as possible. And the most awkward part was that her daughter ended up yelling inside the closet saying, Mom, you can come out now with Bubba. And me and this teacher, we ended up getting everything on as quick as possible. And my teacher was trying to speedrun fixing her hair, as I ended up just basically trying to buckle up my pants. And finally, when the closet door opens, we both walk out as if nothing happened. And right after the party, when everything was over, I remember my dad went to go pick me up, and as I'm walking out her door, my teacher grabs me by the shoulder and says, Bubba, this is our secret, and no one knows anything but me and you, okay? Yeah, I'll see you in class. And that's when I ended up leaving. I got inside my dad's car and pretended nothing happened. And I remember when I was in my classroom doing my test that our teacher handed out, she ended up seeing me drop my phone, and what this teacher does is absolutely insane, because she goes under my desk and she ends up not only picking up my phone, but touching my eggplant. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but crazy story. So today's story all takes place back in my grade 9 year. And in grade 9, I had this one subject that I totally hated with a burning passion, and that was algebra. And if you guys don't know what algebra is, basically it's a sort of math that no one likes whatsoever. I don't know why we always have to solve for x, because we never end up finding it useful even after we do. But I remember in my algebra class, there was a super old lady that used to teach us algebra that everyone in my school hated. She was super annoying, she was super slow, and she had this annoying accent that no one liked. Hell, half of the time, I don't think anyone actually understood what in the world she was saying. But I remember it got to the point in the school year where so many people ended up actually skipping class that it became basically a trend. There were so many moments where I even skipped algebra, and let's just say 100%, a lot of us were definitely going to fail that class. Even I got to a point where I was worried I was going to fail the class. Until one day, I remember when a bunch of students ended up entering algebra class one day, I walked in there sitting, and we all ended up sitting in there waiting for longer than an hour. And we realized one thing: the teacher never even showed up. We ended up thinking that she maybe got into a car accident, or that maybe she died. But for some reason, the teacher actually never ended up showing up at all. All of us got kind of worried about it until our principal finally showed up and said, all right, class, I have no idea where your teacher is, so you guys can all just go ahead and skip the class for the day. Walk around the school hallways. Don't, disturb any classes. Just have a good day. I remember at that point, a lot of us actually ended up going out and celebrating. We were all celebrating how happy we were that we didn't have to suffer another day of algebra. But let's just say us celebrating went real quick to worrying, because we did not know where our teacher was. And the next day, let's just say things got a lot worse, because I remember the next day we ended up going inside our classroom and we all sat down thinking that we were going to have a new teacher. And boy, did we have a new one, because the one that ended up walking in saying, oh, you guys must be my new algebra class. And when all our heads turned in the classroom to see who it was, goddamn, I gotta say, this was one of the hottest teachers that ever walked in. And this teacher looked also super young, like so young to the point where she looked like she just finished schooling to become a teacher. I remember she was walking in and all of us in the class could not stop staring at her nice peach. Like, no joke, she had the peach of Mount Everest on a Christmas day. It was so perfect. And I remember it got to the point where a lot of people in the school started hearing about this new algebra teacher, and almost my entire class that would usually skip, by the way, ended up showing up in class because of this new teacher. I gotta say, this teacher was a great influence on basically everyone in my school. I'm not gonna lie. But I remember remember a lot of us would go to algebra class and start sitting down and paying attention. And before anyone says anything, no, we weren't paying attention to the algebra she was teaching and solving for X. We were mostly focusing on her nice big peach every time she would turn around and start writing stuff on the whiteboard. And I want to say that wasn't even the best part about her, because this teacher actually really showed that she cared about us. For some reason, she had that like motherly feeling to her, even though she wasn't a mother. At least to my knowledge, she wasn't. But going on, it got to the point where I want to say a lot of guys in my school had a major crush on her. And I remember one day after school, I ended up actually forgetting something inside my algebra class, so I ended up walking in there. And when I walked in there, I ended up seeing the most craziest thing ever. Because when I walked in there, I ended up seeing my teacher actually sitting at her desk crying in the classroom. I ended up walking up to her saying, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right?" "Oh, hey, Bubba. No, it's not all right. I'm just stressing out, you know, teaching algebra. And, you know, recently me and my boyfriend just broke up, so I'm kind of just in a vulnerable place right now." "Oh, I'm sorry," is what I ended up telling her. To be honest, I didn't really know how to give good breakup advice at this time, because I was just getting into women, okay? Like, I was just getting into my rizology. But basically, I ended up just telling her what I ended up hearing in a bunch of movies, and that was, "Hey, honestly, there's a lot of good guys out there waiting for you, and any guy would be lucky to have you." When I said that, I remember she looked over at me and started to lean closer and closer, to the point where she actually just ended up kissing me. No joke, she ended up kissing me in my algebra class, and I remember when that happened, I ended up pushing her off me saying, "Okay, I don't know if we should have done that. Oh my goodness, Bubba, just don't say anything, okay? But like, please, like, don't say nothing." I remember at that moment, me and her just stared at each other awkwardly. And then that's when I ended up telling her, "Honestly, you're the hottest teacher I've ever had. I'm not gonna lie, so I'll stay quiet about it, okay?" And that's when I ended up getting my backpack, getting the thing I forgot, and I ended up leaving. When I left, I remember I couldn't stop thinking about her the entire night. Like, no joke, like, I could not stop thinking about this damn teacher. It was like a movie scene happened, and I just, like, couldn't imagine that it happened to me. To be fair, my life is pretty crazy according to all these story times that I have about my life. But this was, like, one of the most realist moments of my life that I could not understand. But anyways, I remember the next day ended up happening, and I ended up going to school. And when I got to school that day, I remember the teacher started acting really, really different around me. Like, she would be more nice to me. She would basically, you know, not call upon me when she knew I didn't know the answers to certain things. And also, she would definitely let me stare at her peach a lot more than expected. Like, no joke, there was a time where she literally just stood in front of me for 10 minutes when I was working on a worksheet. No idea why, but hey, I mean, homework and a show. I'm not gonna complain. But this is where everything gets insane, because I remember one day when I was in algebra, she ends up walking in front of the class and says, "Okay, class, so this weekend we have our finals quiz for algebra, so make sure you guys study up and prepare for your test." At that moment, a lot of people were starting to feel confident since we were all attending class more. But me, I'm not gonna lie, when it comes to tests, for some reason, I'm just never good at them. Like, no matter how much I study, when the test ends up being right in front of me, I just freeze and not know what in the world's going on anymore. It really sucked, and honestly, it was one of my greatest weaknesses, even still to this day. But anyways, when it became the Friday of the finals test, I remember I ended up basically going into my classroom, freaking out. I was panicking from the inside and just praying that this test was gonna be easy. But when I walked into my classroom, I ended up seeing the test already sat on the table with people's names on it at a certain desk. And when I found my desk, I sat down at it and I realized that I was sitting in the very back of the class where no one, and I mean absolutely no one, was at. So at this moment, I thought to myself, since I'm sitting in the very back corner where no one's gonna see me, not even the teacher, I might as well just cheat and just make sure I pass. So I remember I ended up basically pulling out my phone and putting it between my legs. And when the bell rang, my teacher ended up going in front of the classroom saying, "Okay, class, your test starts now." I remember everyone was doing their test, and me, I was panicking, but luckily I had my phone. So I kept looking between my legs and basically doing the test while cheating. But then out of nowhere, I remember my teacher ended up walking around the classroom, and I got distracted with her peach, and I ended up looking down at a test answer. But then that's when everything decides to go to absolute anarchy, because I end up dropping my phone that was between my legs onto the ground. And my teacher ends up hearing it and turns around and looks at me and says, "Bubba, is everything all right?" Yeah, is what I say as she's walking towards me. And I start panicking, but then she ends up looking under my desk and she sees my phone is there. And what this teacher does is absolutely insane, because she ends up going on her knees and goes under my desk. And not only does she pick up my phone, but she ends up grabbing my eggplant. I know, literally the most insane thing ever. No joke, I ended up just sitting there panicking. And I was just looking at my test full of questions about finding X when someone was touching my eggplant, bro. Like, I didn't know what was going on, and it got to the point where I pretended to drop my pencil onto the ground, and I ended up going under my desk with her saying, "Yo, what are you doing?" "Oh, Bubba, I know you were staring at me," is what she says under the desk while everyone's doing their test. And that's when I told her, "We can't do it right now. Just wait till after school or something." "Okay, after school, promise?" "Yeah, I promise, is what I said to her, and I ended up going back on my desk and basically trying to do my test again. No joke, the entire time I couldn't stop staring at my test, and honestly, I couldn't think straight. I couldn't even think like about anything other than what just happened. I remember when the bell rang and the test was over, I ended up handing my piece of paper, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't even finish the test. I definitely failed it, and I knew I failed it. But honestly, I knew that after school that day, I would have to find some way to make sure I got an A. As the school day went on, I couldn't stop thinking about what happened, but when the school day finally ended, I ended up going to my algebra teacher's classroom, and I saw her there. When I saw her, I ended up closing the door behind me, and I walked up to her saying, listen, I definitely failed my algebra test, and like, honestly, like, I need to pass this class. Oh, it's okay, you can pass it. Wait, really? Yeah, you just have to do one thing for me. And at that moment, me and her, we ended up doing the devil's tango. Yeah, definitely extremely illegal, and no one should do this, by the way, but we ended up doing it. And then afterwards, well, she ended up putting an A on my report card for algebra. Okay, before you judge me, this wasn't supposed to happen. Seriously, like, how was I supposed to know that I was gonna end up making out with my own teacher? Okay, wait, I realize how weird that sounds, but let me explain the story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane but also super embarrassing video. So this all starts in the last day before winter break, and we had a substitute teacher in my science class that, let's just say, a lot of people were excited about. I have no idea why. As for me, I'm just a guy trying to survive high school. So I remember when I walked inside my high school knowing about this new substitute teacher for our science class, everyone was making a big deal out of it because apparently she was super attractive and apparently she was super hot. And for this story, we're just gonna call her Miss V. Now, Miss V was the talk of the school. Literally everyone was speaking about her. And I remember one of my buddies ended up walking up to me being like, yo, Bubba, did you hear about this new baddie that's in school right now? Are you talking about Miss V? Is what I told him, because I heard some girls talking about it down the hallway. And that's when he says, oh yeah, bro, like, she's a 10 out of 10. Like, you gotta talk to her, bro. Like, she's so bad. At that moment, I had really no idea what in the world he was talking about or why he's even talking about a teacher in that way. Like, I know for a fact if a teacher saw us talking like that, we would have gotten like suspended or like expelled or anything. Anyways, I remember when science class actually started on my 4th block, I ended up heading there with my buddy. And when we got there, I remember we sat down waiting for the teacher. 10 minutes go by and still no teacher arrived. It made all of us in the class wondering where this teacher was, and we started looking around like confused on what's happening. But that's when afterwards the teacher finally walks in, Miss V. Now, Miss V was a really attractive lady. I think we all can confirm that. But one thing that really confused us the most is that this girl was definitely full of herself, because when she was walking in, she was just taking selfies of herself like over and over. Like, literally she would walk in and being like, selfie, 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 and it was really, really weird. Especially as a high school student, like, we weren't allowed to pull out our phones. Why was she? Anyway, she ends up coming in front of the classroom, introducing herself as Miss V, and all of us could not stop staring at her. We were all like in awe about how attractive she was, and it was really funny because I remember it got to a point where one of my friends actually ended up taking a photo of her because she was taking photos throughout the class. Yeah, it really made no sense. But going on, I remember as science class started, we were talking about chemistry, and then slowly we ended up talking about biology, but not the biology you guys are thinking of. I'm talking about the biology of love. I remember she started talking in front of the classroom being like, so guys, I'm guessing you guys all have like a crush in here. And when she says that, we all look at each other like, no. And my crush wasn't even in that classroom. My crush was in a different class, so I couldn't really agree with her on that. But I remember she was like basically like telling us about like her high school experience and how like we need to be more fun and have exciting moments and, you know, cherish the good times of being a high schooler, which, to be honest, I don't really know if that's true. Like, don't get me wrong, I love my high school experiences more than the next person, but at the same time, I want to experience, I guess, the healthy ways of life, not the crazy ways like I'm used to, I guess, nowadays. But when she said that, I remember I ended up raising my hand and I said, well, I mean, we are having a pretty good time, but what does this have to do with our crush? Oh, well, Bubba, I'll tell you, is what she says right after. And that's when she starts telling us about her amazing time back when she was in high school, about how students would play fun little games. Now, you guys are probably wondering what games, and the games I honestly remember back when I was a kid was like Heads Up 7-Up, or like, I don't know, like Duck Duck Goose, like all the ones that most kids don't really enjoy playing nowadays. But for her, the game she was talking about was like, oh, like we should play things like Spin the Bottle, or like, what about Truth or Dare? At that moment, when she said Truth or Dare, a lot of students in my class started giggling and kind of freaking out. And me, I played Truth or Dare a couple times here and there, especially like that one time with my babysitter, which if you guys want to watch that video, go right ahead. But I remember she was talking about, you know, playing playing these games, and I start to worry because obviously I'm not one to play these games. So I remember I stood up and I'm like, honestly, teach, I gotta head out and go to the bathroom. And I ended up leaving that classroom to go to the bathroom, and I actually ended up never coming back. Yes, I literally skipped class. No one should do this. Don't skip school. It honestly isn't funny. It's not cool, nor does it make you a better person. Stay in school, kids. Seriously. After staying in the bathroom for a long time until the bell rang, I remember I walked out of the bathroom, and right in front of me was the one person I did not expect to see, and that was Miss V. Apparently, Miss V was waiting for me the entire time outside the bathroom to see if I would actually show up again, which she was right. I didn't, and she ended up taking me to the principal's office. Seriously, don't like Miss V. She's a snitch, but snitches get stitches, or I guess this D. Wait. That didn't make any sense. Never mind. Going on. As we were in the office, I remember I was sat down and I had to wait for the principal to show up. But for Miss V, she wanted to make sure I didn't run away from the principal's office like I used to all the time back when I was in high school. So I remember she ended up sitting right beside me. But apparently the principal was out on a field trip and wasn't going to show up towards the end of the day. So Miss V thought, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm just going to stay till the end of the day with you. What? Are you serious? At this moment, she was basically telling me how if I was able to skip one class, I could just skip the entire school day, which, I mean, she's not wrong. I could, but still, like, come on, bro. Like, it was just one class and you were talking all weird. I don't know. She wasn't getting the point. And I honestly felt super uncomfortable. I remember after like an hour goes by, Miss V had to go to the bathroom, but she didn't want me to leave her sight. So I remember what she ends up doing is that she ends up actually making me follow her to the bathroom and stand outside of the staff bathroom that only teachers were allowed to use. I didn't want to be there, to be honest, but at the same time, she was like telling me how I had to be there and not to move at all. So as I'm sitting there by the door, it got to the point where Miss V decided to ask me the one question I did not expect any teacher to ask. So, Bubba, do you have like a girlfriend? What? Yeah, like, do you have a girlfriend? No, I don't. Oh, okay. Well, do you want to play a little game? Why do you always want to play games all the time? Is what I asked her. And that's when she ended up saying, okay, Bubba, you'll know the answer to that if you say truth for when we play truth or dare. At this moment, I didn't know why she wanted to play truth or dare so bad, but we ended up playing. She started asking questions about my life and, you know, how much of a, I guess, F-boy I was back in high school. And I started asking questions about her, which I started to realize that Miss V had a really popular social media following. And on top of that, she's been divorced twice. Yeah. Bummer. I remember I felt super weird when she said all that and things were getting too personal to the point where I ended up saying, Miss V, would you rather do dare instead? Oh, okay. What dare do you want to do? I don't know. Isn't that for me to decide? Okay, what do you want me to do? At that moment, I was about to dare her to go away, but sadly, not gonna lie, we were already too in depth in the game. So I decided to say, I don't know. Just like make the loudest burp you can do. And Miss V actually ends up leaving out the biggest burp ever. No joke, Miss V. If you're watching this video, you got a crazy burp, girl. Hopefully you can burp on this. Never mind. Okay, anyways, going on. After Miss V does this, she ends up looking over at me and she asks the same thing. Okay, Bubba, truth or dare? And I'm standing there super confused on what I should be saying. But then that's when I said dare as well. And that's when Miss V ended up leaning in towards me and kisses me. She didn't even say what the dare was. She just straight up kisses me right then and there. At that moment, I felt super uncomfortable and I didn't know what to do. I'm just looking at her and she's looking at me, and it got to the point where even the secretary that was like in like, you know, the principal's office just ended up walking into the staff room confused on what was going on. And at that moment, the secretary ended up saying to both of us, Miss V, Bubba, I need you two to sit and wait for the principal to come back. Uh-oh, we both said, and we ended up both sitting together knowing that we were both going to be in trouble for kissing each other. To be fair, she kissed me. I didn't kiss her. Let's just make that very clear for everyone watching this video. YouTube, I swear I'm not a bad guy. From there, me and Miss V ended up waiting till the end of the day. And finally, when the principal finally showed up, Miss V ends up standing up saying, oh, principal, I'm not gonna lie. Everything's okay now. And me and Bubba are just gonna go. And at that moment, the principal ends up pulling out his phone and he pulls out a photo from the security cameras of me and Miss V making out. She ended up getting fired and I ended up getting expelled for like 2 days. But honestly, long story short, just don't make out with your teachers.